Hi, guys, and welcome back to the Candid Cast, where we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly in rowing and coxing. So today we are going to talk about going back to school. So again, I'm your host, Whitney, and I brought on a very special guest today that I'm really, really excited. There's honestly no better person to be talking about this. We are going to talk about going back to school, getting into universities, how to get the edge, and what you can do now during this very strange quarantine time that we are dealing with, where half the people can't even go outside. So what are we going to do to get into school and gain the edge and get a look from those coaches? So first of all, I want to introduce Luke Walton, longtime friend, awesome guy, just honestly stellar rower, leader, coach, triathlete, anything and everything, you name it. You've probably done it. It's incredible. So first off, you rode for Cal, right? Go Bears.
I did.
Sorry, Huskies. Um, went to the 2004 Olympics in the men's pair. So I want to ask you a little bit about that too.
Sure.
Was the race director for Crew Classic, as if, you haven't done enough already. You race as a triathlete and coach, and now that's sort of evolved into this. And yes. I want to talk about what this is. So if you don't mind, please let me know if I missed anything, and then let me know where we can start talking about the Academy. I want to hear all about it. So
sure.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about what we missed.
I'm not really sure you really missed that much. That you kind of encapsulated everything in a nutshell. And I may have missed it, but I did spend 2 years rowing at Cambridge, losing campaigns both times, lost to Oxford. But was definitely a terrific experience. And we can talk about that too in this podcast if you like.
Definitely. So how did this, quote, side gig of coaching athletes in the Academy, the Rower Academy, let's call it its full name. Sure. How did this turn into your full-time gig?
Yeah. Well, I think all of us go through periods of time where, although we're extremely passionate about rowing, we get overwhelmed by it and we kind of get burned out. And when I graduated from Cambridge in 2006, I was pretty burned out. And so as you pointed out, I switched to triathlon. I was a triathlete at first, and then I started coaching, and I got heavily involved in triathlon. And it was terrific. I really loved it. But as rowing has a way of doing, I started getting sucked back into the rowing community. And it came in the form of starting to work with young athletes and help them improve their ergometer scores. And that started about a decade ago. So for the past decade, I have been working with young men and women who are interested in rowing in college. And it's evolved to where it is now, where this is what I do full time. I am fully committed to helping young men and women navigate the recruiting process and improve their skills and get back into, or not back into, but get into the university of their choice and the university of their dreams. And I think you'd agree with this. The rowing community has given us so much, right? It's something we're really proud to be a part of. It's an amazing community. And so for me, as many athletes as possible that can have a similar experience to mine, that's what it's all about.
Okay. So I actually skipped over the obvious and asked you a little bit about how you got into this, but let's talk about what the Rower Academy actually is.
Sure. Yeah. So, as I have been coaching athletes over the past decade, you start to see a lot of similar questions pop up. Each family that's new to the process, each athlete that's new to the process, you see a lot of redundancy in the questions, and you see a lot of information and misinformation out there. And it's a nerve-wracking process for the athlete and for the family. And so what we're here to do is help navigate that process. And it's not simply consulting. It's not simply about, okay, well, this is your current ERG score and your GPA, SAT, ACT. Here are some schools we think might be interested in you. Despite an athlete's interest in school, there's actually another requirement, which is, well, how much faster can you make your ERG score, right? Because any recruiting coach is going to ask you, well, where are you now? And then the next thing you're going to say is, well, how about 3 seconds faster, 4 seconds faster, right? So you're always chasing. And so it dawned on me that consulting isn't the only appropriate thing to be doing working with high school athletes. You should also be backing what you do through development. So we coach and help athletes improve their ERG score. And basically, to simplify the process in two parts, we work very hard to help the athletes get as fast as they possibly can. We encourage them to do the best they possibly can in school. And what comes from that are more conversations with coaches, more attention with coaches. And then the real consulting can start, where you're helping the family navigate that process.
Okay, so it's a little bit of the coaching first slash mentorship almost, sort of into that process.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
And I think you're hitting on an excellent point, that coaching goes beyond technique. Coaching goes beyond fitness. Coaching enters into the mental realm, and helping young athletes stay inspired, stay motivated, gain confidence. Those are all things that we're looking to do at Rower Academy. Yeah.
And that's really, really neat. And you have obviously raced at so many different types of programs, from Cambridge to Cal to club teams. I'm sure you've raced all over the place for the US. So with all of these different pathways into different schools and different systems, we have UC systems here, state systems, private schools, foreign schools. How do you sort of navigate the different systems? Do you personally have to just know and understand them? Do you have a connection? Like, how do you guide people through so many different systems and processes?
Sure. And you're asking a really poignant but expansive question, but like, let's walk it back to, we all know that Aunt Becky is in trouble right now for trying to get her daughters into USC, and they're not even rowers, right? So, that is not that you're asking that question, but it does get to the point of, is there a way to game the system? How am I going to get the inside information that's going to put me in the best position to get into college? And we're very clear in what we do, that we're not just consulting and trying to place athletes. We back what we do with the development aspect, right? And so working with athletes, tirelessly to help them improve, to become faster, is absolutely key to what it is that we do. It's different at every school. It really is different. It's different in the United States, outside of the United States, in D1, D2, D3, even across D1, it's going to be different. And so one of the things that's vitally, vitally important is we never want to reduce any child to a soundbite. Not that parents do this on purpose, but we don't want to reduce them to the soundbite of, Timmy just got back from his first semester at Yale. Is Timmy really happy at Yale? And if the answer is yes, awesome. We found it's the right place for Timmy to be rowing. But if the answer is no, then it's not about fit anymore. And the brilliant thing about rowing is that, by and large, really, not even by and large, just point blank, the best academic institutions in the United States are also the best rowing institutions. You're not going to end up rowing somewhere and feel like you were cheated out of an education. And so to that end, we really, really work to focus on fit over name brand or status, because I think the rowing community itself is just so strong. It kind of doesn't matter where you went to school. If you want to talk business, if you're a rower, you're going to immediately associate with other rowers. So for us, it's about fit over status or namesake, or, trying to determine one thing as the top or the best. What is the top or the best is, where does your son or daughter end up going where they're going to be the most fulfilled? Where's the fit? Where's the right fit? So we really, really hammer that point home with parents and athletes.
And that's so cool. I mean, obviously I can tell that you're so passionate about this. And so you've been coaching these athletes for, you said, about 10 years, but what's the inspiration for really digging into like this niche and this part of it? Like, did you see people making too many mistakes? Or what is it for you about this process that really like lights your fire?
Well, I can speak very selfishly at first. And the selfish part of me was the one that, I'm so burned out. I've had enough of rowing. I need some time away. And I started doing triathlon. And then I really kind of fell into coaching athletes in the rowing world again. And I was coaching youth athletes. And all of a sudden, I'm in a room with novices who are so fired up about rowing, and they're so excited, and everything is brand new and it's so amazing. And I'm like, oh wow, there's that energy I was missing, and for anyone who's done it at a high level, collegiate or beyond, the 2-a-days, the 3-a-days, like, you have to be passionate or you can't do it, but it starts to be a grind. So what really started at first was just sort of a natural evolution of that idea that, like, wow, rowing's cool, rowing's fun, rowing's exciting. And I was kind of like brought back to my 16-year-old self in my novice year, thinking like, what are the opportunities that are ahead of me? And I'm 40 years old now, so I can look back and think about all the things that I've gone and seen and done, and all of that, or most of it, most of the most amazing experiences in my life were through rowing. And so it really comes down to that. It comes down to being able to be part of that process selfishly, but then also to just work very hard to provide the knowledge that I've acquired through my rowing career, having been coached by amazing coaches and some, legends in the sport, being able to take what I see as the best of all of them and try to impart that knowledge on youth rowing. So it really is, from a mission statement, it is about having an impact, a positive impact on youth rowing, specifically in the United States right now. But, I'm sure there are, as we talked about before the show, many internationals who are finding their way into the United States and want to row for a college team here.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so infectious and so fun to be around kids that are kind of starting to row or are not burned out yet. And they're just like, what do I need to do to get faster? Or my favorite are the ones that don't even know how fast they are. They just sit down and, they'll sit down, pull a 550 or something. And you're like, okay, that's a good place to start.
Yeah. There are some absolute just beasts in youth rowing right now. And it has evolved. Fitness training has evolved. It has improved, not only at the collegiate and Olympic level, but also at the youth level. And so you're seeing some very, very impressive ERG scores coming out of, young men and women very early on in their career.
Yeah. Yeah. And have you seen that just evolve even over the last few years? It's been pretty extreme.
Oh yeah. Like even over the last few years, but if you want to talk a decade or two back to when I was a rower, I mean, it's just faster, I mean, from a heavyweight perspective, I was recruited to row at Cal at 632, and 632, you're getting, maybe there was a spot kind of lying around somewhere, and they could figure it out. But, the majority of these colleges, specifically for heavyweight men, you're looking into the 620s and beyond. And there's athletes out there producing that. And that was not as common when I was younger, but it's much more commonplace now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so when you start coaching these athletes and you start working with them, what challenges do you see primarily popping up as they come to you? Let's say I want to come to you. Let's say I'm a rower. I pull a 942K, so ignore me. I'm not going anywhere fast. But so let's say I come to you. I've got this kind of not amazing 2K, and I really want to get into school. I'm like, please help me. What problems do you tend to see pop up the most with kids that come to you?
Sure. I mean, beyond the obvious one, right, which is my ERG score isn't where it needs to be, and now I need to work on that. Yeah, okay. So we work on your technique, and we really make sure you're rowing well. We make sure that you're rowing structurally sound. We make sure that you're addressing the machine the way it wants to be rowed, that you're not fighting it, trying to beat the machine. We focus on training that is very specific to the individual. And during the school year, a lot of the work that we do is supplemental. It's supplemental work. These high school athletes are already rowing 6 times a week, and they have great programs, and they're great coaches out there. So we're coming in for the hour of attention, every now and again that an athlete's not getting. In the summertime, do we command more of their attention? Sure. We're getting training programs out there, and we're doing more training throughout the summer, but very supplemental through the year. But an answer to your question beyond the physical and technical is the mental side. Athletes don't know how to hurt yet, and I tell them that all the time, and I don't say it in a disrespectful way, but it's sort of an encouraging, you have no idea how much you can give until you start diving into actually giving it. And what comes with that inherently is an acceptance that failure is a possibility and it's not the end of the world. If we don't explore, if we don't send ourselves somewhere new, if we don't risk something, then there's no chance of really, really diving into a great 2K score. You can't get there. You have to explore in training. And so teaching athletes how to fail on a daily basis through experimentation is key. And I'm not asking them to get on the machine and start to row, at a pace they can only hold for 10 seconds and then see if they can hold it for 20. No, it's calculations of, this is how I did it last week or last month. I'm revisiting this set or I'm revisiting this test. Today is the day to we're going to expand a little bit. We're going to venture out into the unknown a little bit, right? And training really is the place to do that. And then the racing the 2K becomes an expression of the training that you've done to get to that point, right? I always try to get athletes in a mental position where they understand that the 2K is an opportunity. It's not the end of the world if it goes poorly. It's not the only 2K you're going to do for the rest of your life. You're going to have so many of them. It's an opportunity to simply express where you are. So getting athletes mentally strong to understand, row within yourself from stroke one to the last stroke of that 2K, and you'll get the best result possible. We need Whitney on the day. We don't need Super Whitney, right? Super Whitney's great and all, but we just need Whitney to be Whitney. And so that's the other part, is helping them block out variables in external variables, things they can't necessarily control, drill down on what it is that they can control, both on a 2K, recruiting process and other things, and just really focus on what they can do on that day.
Yeah, I think I'm so glad you said that. Actually, coaching, I've coached juniors myself, collegiate guys, and obviously as a coxswain, I think it is really good to be comfortable with failing. I think it removes so much pressure, and the less you start, I don't want to say caring, because of course you always care about your performance and how you do, but when you can kind of let that go a little bit and be okay with pushing further, like you said, into the unknown, I think it becomes a lot easier to do it. And it just it's so freeing to just go like, you know what, I'm gonna do the best I can today. Today's the day to just kind of play with it. If I fail, I'll do the same piece or the same workout next week, and with a different mindset or a different.
Yeah, and I mean, you're literally stealing our coaching playbook right now.
Oh, really?
I mean, it is. It's about what you can do on that day.
Yeah.
Did you do your best on that day? And so I constantly reinforce with athletes that they cannot live and die by their results. And so we call it loosening the grip. And just as you said, you don't loosen the grip in the I don't care about the outcome way, but you really drill down into the process and you value process over outcome. And if you're having a great day, you're just pedal to the metal as much as you can get out of that day. Let's do it. If it's an average day, you're looking for that status quo. And if it's a terrible day, and we've all had them, how much can you limit the damage? How little are those splits going to get away from you on the machine? How much can you limit? Because every stroke matters. The only stroke that really matters is the one that you're on. So you have to take that one to the best of your ability, tie a little bow on it, stack it on the shelf, and then go and take the next one. And getting athletes to focus in that way and understand that there's no chart in the world that just plots like this without any up and down and plateau. And there's no chart like that. So being consistent from day to day, we really preach that, and finishing each day with no regrets. I did what I could. It was an awful day, but I limited the damage, and that's all I had. Yeah. You can hang your head high doing that. Not a problem. Not a problem.
I mean, that's an Olympic final. You have the 6 fastest crews in the world right there, but someone's going to win on that day. That's racing. So I think it's really good to kind of get comfortable with that process. And that's so cool that you kind of take that approach. And obviously you've been there, you've done it, you've lived it, you can really relate to the kids when they're trying to go through that process, when they're just thinking about like, am I faster then am I going to win my seat race? Am I going to get the fastest 2K so I can move up an erg in the ranks? You know, what, I don't know, whatever it is, whatever their coach does. But I love that. I love that.
Yeah, I think you're hitting on the concept of morale, right? You know,
yeah.
Being coached by Steve Gladstone, we talked about the 3 pillars of rowing.
Amazing.
And so you have, number 1 is crushing power. That's fitness, right? Number 2 is impeccable technique. That's pretty straightforward. You need to row well. And the third one is great morale. And that is morale across a team, and that is morale within the individual. And mindset is a really, really important part of our sport. You can be physically ready and technically ready to row a 2K, but if you're not there mentally and emotionally, it's just not going to go your way. So it's a really important part of what we do at Rower Academy. It's a little bit intangible. I can't put that in a package and put a price tag on it. You see what I'm saying? It's it's the intangibles that all of us receive from the best coaches, right? And the coaches that we remember are the ones that gave us more than just the physical and technical knowledge. They're the ones who actually cared about our process, contributed to it, understood who we are as individuals, and found ways to coach us as individuals regardless of a team setting. So that's what we're trying to mimic here. Hopefully we're doing that. I can't compare myself to any of the coaches that I've been coached by, because they're absolute legends. But if I can imitate what they're doing, then I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Well, it's got to be passed on in some way. Might as well be you.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, we'll see, right? We'll see.
So what are some misconceptions that kids have about getting into school? So they come to you, they're working on the technique, they're working on the mental aspect of it, but they still have to put something on paper. It's hard to go into Harvard into an interview. You can write the essay, but you still have to, go through the whole process, take the SATs, blah, blah, blah. What are some things that people think that they need, or misconceptions they have about the process? Like, oh, I will never get into this school if I don't have X, Y, and Z.
Perfect. That's a great question, because I try to remind athletes it's okay to want something and think you deserve it. So what happens is, when an athlete wants something but doesn't think that they deserve it, they make the decision for themselves that the university will say no. And so from a failure aspect, we encourage athletes within reason. Yeah, okay, if you think that university is a stretch, why wouldn't you apply? Why wouldn't you engage the coaches and let them make the decision, right? Let them make the decision, because if you don't let them make the decision and you don't make it known that you're interested in an institution, the answer is always going to be no. There's no chance that you're going there. And so that goes along with a hard lesson as a young man or woman, which is, I could be told no, I could fail, and I was told no. I was told no at a lot of the Ivies. I want to go to Harvard. Dad went to Harvard. All 3 of my mom's brothers went to Harvard. I was going to Harvard. That's where I wanted to go. Yeah, they said no. I applied early. They said no. They put me in the regular pool. I was in the regular pool. They said no. They put me on the waiting list, right? And it was within that time that I personally found my best fit. And that turned out to be Cal. Best decision I've ever made in my life. I had the most amazing collegiate rowing career that I could possibly imagine. So there's that. There's that. And what goes with it, to the first part of your question, what are misconceptions or traps that parents and athletes fall into? Waiting too long to think that you need to be fully polished before you make your interest known in a university, right? The recruiting process, the questionnaires exist and they're out there. Whenever you're interested in an institution, even if you're not ready, let them know. Send the questionnaire in, because let's say you send it at the beginning of your junior year, okay? That is way better than waiting until the summer, or even the fall, the summer of your junior year, or even the fall of your senior year, sending in this polished resume of, look at my ERG score and look at where I'm at. And the recruiting coaches are going to be like, where have you been? We've been talking to athletes for the better part of a year here. Like, where have you been?
So you're saying, sorry for interrupting. So you're basically saying, start creating that relationship as early as possible. Even if you're not ready to apply, Just
Yes.
start the conversation.
Yes, absolutely. Because one of the things that you're going to be able to provide are data points along the way. So the questionnaire is hey, how you doing? I'm interested in your institution. I'm interested in rowing at your university. Okay. And they go, the coaches go over your data and okay, well, keep us posted. And then you do that. You're not going to badger any of these coaches, but when you PR on a 6K, you're going to send them that information. When you PR on a 2K, you're going to send them that information. When whatever it is, compelling information that allows them multiple data points to track your progress and to be part of your growth as an athlete. Don't send them the polished where they're like, well, what led up to this 625 erg score or 620 erg, what got you there?
So
send them a 640 and say, hey, I'm interested. And they'll say, cool, kid, come back to me when you're 630. And then you'll come back at 630 and they'll be like, well, cool, can you get 625? It's always, and that's the most important part, even for the fastest athletes, it's always going to be a moving target. It's always going to be a new moving target. There is no guarantee, no matter who you are, that you hit X erg score and it guarantees that you're into an institution. That's just not how it works. So developing a relationship through updating coaches on your progress is a way to become somebody that they can look at and they can chart the progress. And then they can get a sense of, well, how do we think they're going to pan out here? How are they going to pan out over these 4 years? Yeah.
So do you think, on that note too, that starting that conversation, creating that relationship also gives the coach that that look down the road for your potential? So like you're showing your progress over, let's say, a year or two. If you're starting that conversation, like my 6K is this now, but I went, I don't know, 4 to 6 seconds faster now on this next one. Does that give them an idea that, okay, well, now if I bring this guy or girl to my university, that when they start working with me, I can also keep making them faster. Like they're not plateauing. They're not at their peak.
Yeah, I can't speak for them or what their formulas are, or how they do it. But yeah, to your point, I think just from a logical perspective, if I'm in their shoes and I'm presented with a polished resume at the last second versus, I've been talking to Whitney for, she's been updating me. And then when I was able to communicate, I communicated, within NCAA guidelines. Now we're speaking openly through the summer between our junior and senior year. Developing a relationship, I mean, this is a human thing, right? These coaches are looking for the best young men and women for their team. And that's a relationship thing, right? It turns out I probably wouldn't have been a good fit at Harvard. Probably wouldn't have been a good fit. They probably, it probably wouldn't have been for me and it wasn't for them, right? But I was a great fit at Cal. And that's through the conversations that you have. That's from developing those relationships with the coaches. And to go back to an earlier point, these recruiting coordinators, these recruiting coaches and these college teams, they're very smart. They've been recruiting for years and years and years. You're not going to pull a fast one over on anybody. You're not going to gain their interest and attention unless you deserve it. So it's earned. And you can earn that by being a bit vulnerable and saying, I'm not where I want to be. Here's where I am today. Here's my intention to get faster. And you update them along the way. That's a very compelling and real story. And it's relatable.
Yeah, that's really true. Now, do you find that coaches approach that any differently across different school systems? Or is it pretty much the same process in all the different systems?
Well, I think it really depends on the division. It depends on the team itself. It depends on how much space they have on the team, and in terms of recruiting slots that are available, what their relationship is with admissions. And that's the one thing we haven't touched on yet, which is the academics are a huge part of this, right? And yes, Rower Academy. Yeah. Yes. Rower Academy is very, very focused on the athletic aspect of this, but it does not matter how fast you are if you don't qualify academically, because it is the admissions department that will have final say. So if you want to make things easier for a coach to recruit you, then complement your good athleticism with great academics. And that will make the process easier, because you don't want to be a slam dunk athletically, but at risk academically, and you know, and then have those coaches worried about, well, if we do recruit you, are we really going to be able to get you? So academics are an absolutely integral part of doing this. And as we talked about earlier, the best rowing institutions in the world are also some of, if not all, the best academic institutions in the world. So you have to do it. You have to do both. You can't just do one.
Yeah, you definitely want to meet them halfway. Give them ammunition, give them reason to pick you, to select you. And I know just having worked with universities and coached at universities and stuff as well myself, they always say, remember that they are student athletes. Student athletes. So you have to make sure that you are, encouraging the academic side almost before the athletics, and kind of supporting them. And some coaches, probably tend to prioritize other things. So it depends on the program, but they are student athletes, and that's really important to get.
Yeah. And I find that student athletes, everywhere, they're competing through and through. So, there's always the team GPA, for example, and that's something that university looks at very critically. And, not only do you need to be ready academically in high school, you have to still produce in college so that you're contributing to the academic success of the team, so that the coaches and the team are able to demonstrate, no, we're not just recruiting athletes, we're recruiting students. And that is going to give your team a better chance of bringing in better student athletes and more slots, et cetera, because it's not just well, you're good at rowing, you're scraping by at school. No, that's not what they're looking for. And so and across the board, across the United States, across divisions, across schools, it's really no surprise that rowing teams generally hold up that intercollegiate athletic GPA, team GPA, and they're constantly in the bid for the best GPA of any team, across a given institution. So it's just part of the deal. You cannot get away from it. You have to be a good student if you want to row at a great school.
Yeah, I think that's really true. And it really says a lot about rowing too, to your point. Rowers are oftentimes the ones with higher GPAs. And just as a side note, why do you think that is? What's your opinion?
I'm biased. I think rowers are just better human beings. I think rowing should be mandatory. It should be mandatory as it should be mandatory as a physical education, requirement in school. I think rowing, as many cliches that exist in rowing and what it offers, I think it's true. I think rowing teaches time management. It teaches selflessness. It teaches us to check our ego. It teaches us to just be more structured in what we do. And I talk a lot with parents and athletes about the idea that I remember my first year at Cal, living in the dorms, and I remember how structured my life was between school, studying, and sleeping and eating. We ate a lot, and it was
shocking.
Training table is always the best, but but what I found was other students who didn't have activities like that, maybe they weren't athletes, or they weren't part of the band, or they weren't part of something, they would go to lectures all day. They would come home, they would kind of mess around. Next thing you know, it's 10:30, 11 at night, and they're finally getting to studying. And maybe they go to bed at 2 or 3 in the morning. And it just seemed like, they're not really getting things done. Meanwhile, we're regimented, we're structured, we have time limits on what we can and should do. And we just go to work doing that. And I think high school athletes learn that. I mean, I remember being busy in high school, but I don't remember being this busy. High school athletes are insanely busy right now, trying to differentiate themselves from everybody else who wants to go to college. And so they're learning those lessons very, very early on. And I think that is what carries through the rowing community, through college and into the business world.
I think that's so true. Oh my God, you nailed it. It's so true. It's so true. And so you touched on trying to stand out. Like everybody right now is kind of trying to gain the edge. We're obviously in a very strange time right now. Again, like we said, a lot of people aren't even able to go outside. So people have ergs at home. They're making home gyms. You know, there's all kinds of stuff going on. People are getting really creative. I've seen people lifting rocks in their backyard.
Sure.
So, I mean, you do what you got to do. But let's talk a little bit about gaining the edge, because I think,
Sure.
you know, a lot of people don't really know what that means or what to do. And then the other thing that I would kind of like to touch on within that is coxswains versus rowers.
Sure.
So
Sure.
do you, you know, we'll get there. We'll get there a little bit,
Sure.
but, you know, coxswains are sort of a special breed as well. Not that I'm biased.
Agreed. 100% agree. Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about that edge though, first of all.
Sure.
So what do people do to try to gain the edge, and what should they be doing?
Yeah. Well, I think the landscape's a little different this year, specifically for rising juniors that will be seniors in the fall of 2020. There is no rowing season, and so traditionally, you know, part of your communication with coaches is, here's how the team did. Here's how we did in our dual races, or, you know, here's how we did at regionals. Here's how we did at nationals. I was invited to the Penn AC high performance camp. I'm going to junior national dev camp, or I'm going to junior national selection. We're all hoping that this will quickly get resolved, and we'll get back to rowing and going to the boathouse. But right now, none of that exists. And so the erg has become very, very central in this process. So differentiating yourself is first and foremost your erg score, because again, if your erg score isn't up to a certain standard, you're not having conversations with coaches to then differentiate yourself in a human way, right? You have to hit the statistics first in terms of erg score speed to then grant yourself the conversation to express who you are as a human being, a team player, how you plan to contribute to the team and the winning, you know, the winning culture of whichever team it is that you're interested in. So right now, edge is very, very much erg related. It's so hard to do. It's hard to be a high school athlete that loves to go to the boathouse, loves the team, loves the camaraderie, to be at home and be like, all right, so I got my erg, right? And so, you know, I'm encouraging athletes to look at a lot of these online challenges that are happening. Look at a lot of these online, you know, Rowers Choice has their March Madness bracket that they've gone through. US Rowing is starting to create different brackets and championships to continue to provide a sense of community and team, even though we're doing it individually on our rowing machines. But any way that athletes can find motivation to sit on the machine, get the structured training in, get the meters in, that's key this year. It's absolutely key. And there's really no way around it.
So do you get any athletes that come to you, because I tend to hear this a lot, where a guy comes out, I'm just using guys because I cox guys, but
Sure.
they will come in and say like, look, I'm really bad on the erg, but I won't lose a seat race. And you're like, well, you need to show me something, you know, you have to show me something. So do you ever get athletes like that kind of come to you and say like, look, I'm really good on the water, I don't lose a seat race, or I can't get kicked out of the 8, but now I have to pull a really fast 2K and I'm having a mental breakdown over it?
Sure. Let's, you know, let me tell you a quick story about triathlon, right? So this is a fake story. Let's just start out there, but it's fun to present it this way, right? So I have an athlete that comes to me and says, hey, you know, I need help on triathlon. And I say, okay, great. What are we talking? Well, you know, I'm great at the swim. I got a solid bike, but I'm terrible at running. So I think to myself, well, there's your first problem. And I said, okay, well, give me an example of why you think you're so terrible at running. He's like, oh, I'll give you an example. I was at a triathlon. I was leading the pack. I was swimming. I was biking. I was right in there. I was in medal contention, and then we got on the run. And then all these people started to pass me, and all these people started to pass me. And you know what? Not only am I bad at rowing, I suck at running uphill. And I'm like, well, there's problem number 2. And then I said, okay, well, fine. And he's like, so I'm running up this hill. I'm hating every second of it. He's like, there's this dude, and he's wearing like 80s running shorts, and he's just spilling out of his suit, and he's totally not fit, and he just runs by me yelling, "I love hills, I love hills," right? You get the point of the story. It's exactly what you touched on. The idea is if an athlete comes to you and says, "I'm terrible at erging," that is a self-fulfilling prophecy. And spending time and finding ways and strategies to work on our weaknesses and turn them into our strengths is vitally important in rowing. And I've got a newsflash for every high school rower that's out there. Nobody loves the erg. Even the guys and girls that crush it. They're not there for the erg. They're there for the rowing. Everyone is there for the rowing. But the guys and girls that are very, very good on the ergometer are the ones who see the bigger picture, and they see it as the necessary evil or the stepping stone. Let's put it in a positive light, the stepping stone to get where they want to go, right? We can debate whether ergs float or if they don't, but if there's an athlete that's coming at a coach saying, "I row 640, but I'm great on the water," there's no way to prove that this year. There's just no way. But if there's an athlete coming in, "I row 620 and I'm great on the water," well, okay, well, that remains to be seen. But I mean, it's 620. So it really is, it's a you versus you thing. At your, rowing's a power to weight ratio sport. Smart coaches recognize that. Maybe you're not 205 pounds in high school, but you're 175 pounds and you're pulling into the 620s, or low 630s. That's compelling. So it's really about you versus you, getting the most out of the machine you possibly can. Understand it and recognize it as a necessary evil, but see it as homework. See it as an essay you have to write. You do these things, some of them you don't like to do, because education's important. The scores you get are important. The rowing machine is the same way. And so to your point, and to the point we talked about previously, working with athletes to help them get the right mentality and approach to the machine is vitally important, because self-speak is so critical, so critical in terms of success and failure. And what we say to ourselves matters most of all.
That's so true. I love that so much. Yeah, I mean, you can even see the difference in, this is really a whole different podcast, but you can see the difference in mentality alone, even coxing different crews. Like if you have, a little bit of negativity in an 8, it's not the same as if you have everybody that's just like on the same page and gunning for it. And it's that mentality, I think, is just so huge in this sport. And it's so cool that you're spending so much time coaching that and working on that and sort of like building that up. It's really, really neat. And so
to your point on coxswains, and I know we're going to talk about coxswains in a minute, but their voices, all the coxswains I've had in my life, their voices are still in my head, and all of their voices evoke emotional response, right? And there's an intimate link to being on the edge with your crew, rowing as hard as you possibly can, and the voice of the crew comes through. And for better or worse, whether you want it or not as an athlete, there's an emotional attachment to that you'll never rid yourself of. And you will always remember the best and the worst of the coxswains that you had and the experiences that you had, and how they did or did not motivate crews. Not when it was easy, not off the start, but in close races, in after the 1,000-meter mark, when we're kind of in that no man's land of like 1,150 meters in, and you're like, okay, I mean, the coxswains are, I want them, young men and women who are coxswains, to understand that they actually play a role in helping other young rowers develop their own self-speak. They can be a mouthpiece that will help encourage athletes to dig a little bit deeper, and beyond what a coach has to offer, and I still, I still remember all my coxswains from high school, all the way through. And I remember the bonds that's created through the trial by fire that is rowing, so it's not just the rowers that I'm bonded to. It's also, it's also coxswains.
Yeah. And that's so cool to even hear that. Like I could listen to guys like you talk about rowing all day. It's absolutely amazing. It's so inspiring. But a lot of times too, we talk about this kind of a lot on this show, that coxswains aren't always coached. And we oftentimes have to figure things out on our own and have a very different learning curve than rowers, where we're expected to help rowers and lead rowers, but we're not taught how to do it. So we really have a lot of learning to do on our own and on the side. Do you have coxswains that ever come to you and ask for your help in that way? Like they say, I'm interested in rowing for, well, coxing at XYZ University, but I know I have work to do.
Sure. I haven't really worked much with coxswains, and I am I'm a stay in my lane kind of guy, right? I know what I like in coxing, what I don't like in coxing, but I never sat in the seat, and I wouldn't pretend like I had all the answers for coxswains. Does Rower Academy have an ambition to bring on coxing coaches? Yeah, absolutely. Are we going to get there? Yes, we will. But it's all kind of the stages of the growth process. So, when it comes to coxing, I know there are great coxswains out there. I'm sure you've worked with a ton of young men and women that are interested in coxing. I know Mary Whipple does the same. I know there are a lot of names out there who are excellent coxswains that do that. My hope is through conversations like these with yourself and Mary Whipple and others, that it can create for coxswains a better bridge into what rowers need, right? Because in a lot of ways, what really good coxswains do is they pump the crew up. They kind of stroke the ego of the crew, but at the same time, they're very good at carrot and stick, right? They'll give you that positive feedback, but they'll quickly take it away if the team is messing up, and they hold everyone accountable. They hold themselves accountable, everybody in the crew accountable. And, it's not an easy job. If you do your job, 9 times out of 10, nobody says anything to you. If you don't do your job,
everyone tells you.
8 men or women in an 8 letting you know about it, right? And so, it's that old joke that, coxswains can't win the race, but they can sure lose it, right? Like that, it's just sort of, you only notice a coxswain when they're not steering straight. You notice a coxswain when they tell you it's 10 strokes to go, but you're at 300 to go. You see what I'm saying? Like you notice those egregious errors, right? So it's really a thankless job, but it's extremely important. None of the successful crews that I've been a part of have had subpar coxswains. It's just, you could have the fastest 8 men or women in the world, and if you put the wrong person in the coxswain seat, that 8's not going to perform. It's going to perform to a certain level, but it's not going to perform to its highest level. And so I think, I'm probably freaking a lot of young men and women who are coxswains out right now. They're like, oh my gosh, I have to carry the 8 on my back, whatever. That's not necessarily what I'm saying. But it is along the lines of, when we're young, we're very quick to recognize other people's effect over us. We're very slow to recognize our effect, positive and or negative, over others. And I think that's a very important lesson for young rowers and coxswains to learn, that our behavior, our statements, the way we carry ourselves, the way we act, that has an effect over other people. So, my one piece of advice for coxswains is know that as much, garbage as you get from your rowers, they're listening to you. That's why you're getting the garbage. Like you're leading, you're in the most, in an 8, you're in the most elaborate engine available, 8 pistons, 8 different people, and you're trying to coordinate that show. So, understand at a young age that you do have an effect over other people. And with that mentality, through that lens, see how you can affect other people. So the one thing that I know you're going to ask, and it just popped into my head, is the edge that coxswains can get. And again, I can't pretend like I am an expert, but I did know that you were going to ask me this question. And one of the things that I thought about is, if there are no race results, if there's no way for you to, to be able to say, here's audio of me at the regional championships coaching my boat, there's no way to do that. Go onto YouTube, pick a race, pick an Olympic race, pick the champions, and do a voiceover and cox that boat from start to finish. Pretend that you're there, even though you know the outcome. It's no different than visualization, which is so important in rowing for not only rowers, but also for coxswains. So it was just an idea I had. It might be a dumb one. I don't know. Again, I don't pretend to know everything that coxswains need. So I'm jumping in as the guy that's like, well, if I were in the seat, I'm probably not offering anything great, but just an idea I had. You would be much better suited to tell me.
Oh, well, thank you. No, a lot of it is listening to your rowers too. And actually related to what you said before too, so much of it, to be honest, is confidence. It's mental confidence. And if your rowers are constantly kind of breaking you down a little bit, it's the same as rowing, as if your coach was yelling at you every single day. And so coxswains, I think, learning to sort of build up that confidence and have the crew give it back to them too. Try to teach your crew to help you as well. It's just as mental, because the words will flow. Coxswains ask all the time, what should I call? What should I say? What should I do at this time? But it's like, if you know enough about your people, if you know enough about your crew, and you have the confidence, if you're feeling it, if you're keeping in mind that it's your race too, the words will come. You will make mistakes. Yes, you will make loads of them, but it's okay. But so much of it, like you said, just with the rowers, is confidence as well, and learning to kind of be okay with, like, I'm going to make mistakes, but here's what I need to do. But I think practicing, like you said, with a race like that, picking a race, coxing it, even if it's in your head and you're just watching and kind of, walking yourself through races. I think that's a really smart thing to do. I mean, you've had enough coxswains. You could help coxswains. You'd be great. You'd be great.
Yeah, I think real quickly to your point, one of the things that you're saying is understanding your crew and then developing a race plan that revolves around that crew, right? And so It's the same as an athlete getting on to sitting down to take a 2K. All my athletes are different. There's sort of a general approach to a 2K, but some of them have stronger sprint finishes. Some of them have stronger starts. Some of them are stronger through the middle of the race. So I think as a coxswain, understanding the collective strengths and weaknesses of your crew is the best way to make sure that you're not getting into trouble with anything that you call, because you're helping them through their dark times because you understand them, dark times on the rowing course. And then you're helping them through their, to get even more in the great times. And rowing asks you a really, really simple question every single stroke down the course. And that question is, do you want to keep going? That's it. It's the only question it asks. It asks you that off the start, after high strokes, through the 250. You don't even really hear the question, right? You get through the 1,000, maybe there's a whisper of that question. And then you get in the second half of the race, and that question gets louder and louder every single stroke. Do you want to keep going, right? And as an individual, as a crew, as a coxswain, the answer has to be immediately yes. The moment that you're like, my legs are starting to hurt. Wheels are starting to come off already. It happens that fast. The second you cannot answer yes, resounding yes, no matter how loud that question is of do you want to keep going, things are going to start to fall apart. And so I think coxswains recognizing that and finding ways to keep their athletes answering yes every single stroke down the course is extremely important to the success of the race.
Drop the mic. I'm getting fired up just listening to that. That's amazing.
Well, good.
Dang. Oh my God, that was amazing. Okay, so getting kind of towards some of the good stuff at the end here, wrapping up just a little bit. Let's talk about just a couple takeaways and a couple things that people can do again during this quarantine. What should we be doing now at this time of year? This podcast actually won't be out until about next week, so still will be relevant. Sure. But let's talk about just a few takeaways, things people can do right now, and what we can do during this quarantine to kind of gain the edge when nobody's on the water. So it's almost a level playing field.
Sure. And I think that's a good point. And I was speaking with one of my athletes about 2 days ago about this very fact. And I'm doing a lot of virtual training right now. It's super simple. I've got, it's just like this, except you're setting your phone up in a way that I can see you on your erg. You have your earbuds in, for better or worse, I'm in your brain. I'm in your head through that whole session. And so we do a lot of technical work and we do a lot of training. I'm writing a lot of training programs for athletes as well that they can follow. And so I was talking with this athlete, and the athlete was honest and said, with everything that's going on, we just got back to school after spring break. I'm having a little trouble with the training and this and that. And they were being really hard on themselves. And I reminded this athlete, and want to remind all athletes, everybody's in the same situation right now. Nobody's happy about it. Nobody's happy about having to train by themselves at home. Nobody is. But the rowers that really want that edge are the ones that are staying on it, finding that motivation. And a lot of times you can find motivation in just understanding that what you're dealing with, what is difficult for you, is difficult for everybody, right? It's the same mentality in the last 500. If this hurts for me, it's got to be killing the other team, right? It's that confidence that if it's uncomfortable for me, it's uncomfortable for everybody. And then it's about, how do you operate within that discomfort? Recognize it, know that it exists, know the situation is not ideal. It's not ideal for anybody, but what are you doing to keep yourself going? And so, what we offer at Rower Academy is that accountability. We check in, we have very honest conversations with our athletes, with the athlete, the conversation is, well, it's not what we're looking for. We're looking to complete all of these workouts, but we understand where we're at this moment. What are we going to do to move forward? And a lot of times it's back to loosening the grip, right? Can't live and die by every day. You can't repeat that self-talk that like, this is the worst situation. I just want to be back in, at the team, working out with the team at the boathouse. You have to accept the reality of the situation. And then you're just looking to take advantage of it, because nobody is benefiting from not being able to row with their team. But if you want to be recruited and you want to row in college, this is your time to just, man and woman up and get on that machine and get the training in.
Yeah, you can only control what you can control.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, yeah, that's really smart. So athletes right now are pretty much working with you completely virtually,
Yes.
but all over the world. So you can take athletes from everywhere, anywhere. Perfect. I love it. Yeah. Okay. So where can people come find you if they're interested in getting more information about this? Where can we follow you, find you, sign up, get in touch?
I mean, the easiest is the website, right? RowerAcademy.com. So, that's the easiest way to find us. We're on Instagram as Rower Academy. There's a Rower Academy YouTube channel. And we're just constantly working on growing content to help athletes in this time. So, we have videos on drills you should be doing. We have videos on technique. We have, the website with access to all sorts of blog articles and a calendar, which was a little more useful in a time when the calendar was necessary. That'll come back. It'll start kicking again. But where we're really working to differentiate and exceed is in the one-on-one time and the one-on-one coaching. These training programs that we write them in a way where it's shared. As soon as the athlete is uploading their data and their results, I'm able to go on and comment as a coach. So we keep accountability high. We keep the training very personalized. So although it's a difficult time, there has been no better time for an athlete to work on themselves and to have the attention and the programming that'll move them forward the fastest so that they can be the best version of themselves when team training starts again.
Yeah, I don't want to say that it's like a free pass, almost having this whole quarantine thing happen, but it is sort of like pushing pause on everything and giving you an opportunity. It really, really is an opportune time, I think, to try to gain that edge. And I think, if athletes were to go work with you, it would only be magnified. So.
And I know athletes are in school, but they're not going to the boathouse in the afternoon. They're not going to the boathouse on the weekends. So the way that I've been presenting it to athletes is summer started early. How are you continuing to move forward when your scholastic program or your club program is on pause? And not only does summer start early, there are no rowing camps today. So what are you doing? So we're operating from that standpoint that summer came early. And for us at Rower Academy, we do a lot of work in the summertime because athletes do need to continue to move forward, and they need that structure. So we're happy to bring people through and help them along in this time. And if we can contribute to their process, we'd be honored to do so.
Well, that is amazing. I mean, I wish I had you when I was trying to get into school. So.
Thank you.
Confusing. Yeah, it was confusing. I applied to, Ivy Leagues and state schools and private schools and UCs and, every possible foreign schools. And it was a nightmare. It's difficult. It's so much work. So
the last thing I'd say about it is this is your opportunity to get as fast as possible, to study as well as you possibly can, to grant you as many possible conversations with institutions, colleges that you're interested in going to, and creating a very great problem for yourself, where it's like, wow, I'm actually getting the attention of more than one place. There are multiple universities that are interested in me, and then working to find the best fit, right? And so this is the time to chase the academics and chase the ERG score, so that you don't end up in the position of the summer of your junior year, fall of your senior year, where you're chasing coaches to try to get their attention.
That's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. Well, gosh, thank you so much for all of your time and wisdom and energy. Obviously, being around your energy is so infectious, and anybody that really gets the opportunity to work with you is very lucky. You just have some amazing experience and insight and connections and just everything. So I would really, really encourage people to go get in touch with you and learn some things, and just, have a teammate in this, because it's more fun to do it together. So
thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, it's absolutely my pleasure. So maybe we could get you on like a later time in the year again, kind of talk about like where we should be. We can do a little update or something.
Happy to do it anytime.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Again, make sure to follow on Instagram, YouTube. Go check out the Rower Academy. It's really awesome what you guys are doing for the rowing community, especially right now when people feel very isolated. You can also write to me any questions on Instagram at the Candid Cox, or email me, of course, at thecandidcox@gmail.com. And leaving this episode on a positive note. Thank you again, and we will see you guys next week. Bye.